Parents of Reddit, what is the weirdest thing you caught your children doing? When my son was about 4, he was playing in his playroom. I was on the couch and heard some sounds behind me. It was just us. So I turn and see my son looking up at the light fixtures and whispering. I ask what he's doing. His response: "I'm asking all the light bulbs in the house to not fall and kill you." Thanks, son. He's truly got my back. My son licked my toe. I asked him what he was doing. And he said, "Time traveling." He was 3. Found my kid talking to the hole in the sink when he was 2. Turns out that's where he said God lives. Carry on. Ya weirdo. Ex's eldest hoarded cardboard tubes. If asked, they were simply for later. The youngest adopted and formed a strong emotional bond with a garlic for about a week. Few years ago, the cinnamon challenge was a thing. Walked in the door to my son with his head under the kitchen faucet, gulping and spitting water. He accidentally grabbed the cumin instead of the cinnamon. My boys share a room. They were about 2 and 7 at the time, and I walked in their room and found them rocking on their hands and knees singing, "We a the Wiener Dudes." I have no fucking idea. When my son was first learning to talk, my mom kept saying, "Just wait until he learns to say no." Like, really building up the anticipation. Well, I opened my eyes one morning to my beloved child, 3 inches from my face and staring at me. As soon as he sees I'm awake, he loudly and dramatically whispers, "No." I still feel like he was letting me know that whole phase had started. When my son was about 3 years old, he liked to wash his eyebrows with my facial cleanser. Just the eyebrows. Wet, lather, rinse, repeat. He said it made them nice and soft. Packing peas from our garden up her nose. This required a trip to the local hospital emergency room, where the doctor, a dad of several young children himself, thought it was hilariously funny. Soon my wife and I were laughing as well. I woke up to my 5-year-old spraying Windex on the window beside my bed, cleaning it thoroughly, then nodding at me and moving on to cleaning the windows in the next room. I still don't know what the hell was happening. Edit. She told me before bed that it needed cleaned so her cat could look out. The bottom of the windows gets smeared because the cats push their faces against it. So she wanted it clean for them. Not my child, but I've caught my sister doing multiple strange things as a child. The 2 most notable were: I once caught her playing with a bag with yellowish liquid inside when she was 10. She had pulled this bag from the side of her backpack. I asked her what it was. It was her own pee. She had been keeping it in there for days, and once in a while she'd pull it out, go play with. I was horrified. When she was 8, she cut off her doll's hair, dismembered it, and gave it a funeral which she made all of us attend. She went to dig it up several days later, but it wasn't there. She's done many other things, but those were the 2 weirdest things she did. My brother decided he wanted a pee hat, which is literally what it sounds like. A hat he could pee in during the night, while already a stupid idea, since he didn't empty it. He chose a plastic hat with hole in it. Edit. It was a toy construction hat with 2/4 holes in the top, meaning his makeshift toilet had 2/4 holes for the pee to leak from, and he was keeping it in his toy box. Caught my 2-year-old son licking the floor. He seemed really into it. We caught my sons, maybe 6 and 3 at the time, both sitting on the toilet together, one behind the other, pooping. They told us it was a double poop. We forbid them from ever doing that again. Edit to add. For those of you who think we are terrible parents because we stopped our children from doing double poops, please know they seem to be well adjusted and appear to have no permanent damage from this incident. We have provided them with ample outlets for their creativity that do not involve poop. When my brother-in-law was 3, he was so obsessed with the toilet plunger they had to buy him his own so he'd stop grabbing the used one. It was his best friend. Let's see. My daughter was drinking strawberry milk and then spitting it back into the cup so she could drink it again. I had hosed off a tarp and it was drying on the patio. We went outside and she just stooped down and took a drink out of a puddle on the tarp. Just today I was in the garage and she came out, instantly grabbed a toothbrush I used to clean car parts and stuck it in her mouth. I don't even know anymore. Packing turds into cardboard tubes with toilet paper and hiding them under the sink. She called them poop bombs. There was like 10 of them under there. My 5-year-old nephew went to feed the chickens yesterday. I told him to get a hat. He came back fully naked with gumboots and a straw hat on. Apparently the last time he went to the chicken house they pecked at his junk. And he wants to show them that it's not big enough to eat yet? Kids are weird. My mom caught me bringing eggs from the kitchen into my room and sitting on them in a blanket nest, hoping they'd hatch. What she didn't catch was that I had been doing this for a while and would put the eggs back into the fridge when they wouldn't hatch after a few days. When my daughter was little, old ladies would come over and enthusiastically ask her simple questions. Like, "What's your name?" And she would always reply in flat monotone, "Birthday cake." Then they'd ask another question like, "Oh, well, how old are you?" And she'd say, "Birthday cake." They would look over at us with great concern. So annoying. I caught my twins in first grade measuring each other's penises with a tape measure. They got to measure their heads in first grade for bike helmets. I walk in after their baths and one is on his back with his legs the air. Of course my husband said, "That's not something you do until high school." I was the child. I was in my backyard and noticed there were a lot of slugs around since it had been raining. I was concerned that they had nowhere to go and they would be stuck outside where they would drown in the rain. So I went to the garage and got a bin and went around collecting every slug I could find. Then I got the idea to make it into a miniature city. I put in water, moss sticks, etc. And it became a project of mine that I maintained for weeks. Well, one day my mom walks outside for whatever reason and finds me holding a bin that's just full of slugs. She made me put them back and hose the bin down. I was pissed I lost all my hard work. When my son was 3 years old, we noticed the smell of burnt plastic coming from our heater vents. I called one of our friends that worked in heating and cooling and he came over. Our furnace was in our crawl space so he went down. About 15 minutes later, he asked me to hand him 3 black garbage bags through one of the vents, so I did so. He came up later with 3 bags of plastic toys. I had wondered where all my son's toys were going. I asked my son why he was putting toys down the vents. He said, "Mommy, there are alligators down there and if I don't feed them my toys, they will eat my sister." I saw my kid, who was 4, in the backyard looking for bugs or worms. He grabbed something and put it in his mouth. I asked him about a few minutes later. He said he ate a worm. I laughed and asked why. He said he wanted to know what it tasted like. So I asked what did it taste like. He said it tasted like mud. The next day I asked him if he really ate a worm. He replied, "Yay," in the most defeated and embarrassed way any human could. "Y'all live. Y'all learn, eh?" I'm not a parent, but my niece was very upset that her older sister wouldn't turn the TV over when I was babysitting once. After about 10 minutes she pretended to be interested in the washing machine that was on at the time and sat in front of it and watched it like a TV. For an hour and 20 minutes. Her older sister watched the rest of her film but obviously wasn't enjoying it. She was outraged that her little sister was having a great time watching wet clothes spin round and round. It's the most creative act of revenge I've ever seen. Not a parent. But when I was a kid I used to prefer to poop in the park closest to my house instead of at home. I used to wonder who cleaned up my poop every day because the poop was always gone by the next day. After months of doing this I found out a neighbor mom was the one who kept cleaning up my poop. I was mid-poop one sunny afternoon when I saw her walking towards the park from her condo across the road with a baggie. Probably because she had a chore every day that included going to the park to clean up my poop before her children could go play. I was squatted atop the playground in one of those wooden cubicles at the top of a slide, peering out through a crack between the wooden pillars, watching the neighbor mom coming closer, trying to finish my poop at a rapid pace. I finished my poop, didn't wipe, because I was a disgusting child pooping in a park, yanked my pants up and flew my poopy ass down the slide and booked it through the field to home base. Raced through the door and continued to live my best life until there was a knock on the door. My mom answered the door and to my horror there was neighbor lady and she and my mom had a long talk and outside on the front step. When my mom came in she looked at me with pure disgust and said, "No more pooping at the park." My older brother's friends were over and overheard my mom scream that at me. They demanded to know the whole story. Then when I started kindergarten, one of the children of the poop picker upper neighbor mom was in a grade ahead of me and recognized me and told everyone what I had done. I was and always will be the park pooper. Edit. I did not have a very good childhood. I should definitely clarify that. I have no explanation other than I was probably neglected. I'm honestly shocked at how this blew up. Thought I was just telling my poop story. To those wondering, it happened in the 90s. Thank you for the awards. 1. Coating himself in the entire bathroom. In an entire, brand new, industrial-sized garlic powder from Costco. 2. Having a snow day with his friends. After unzipping the giant beanbag chair. A little girl I was babysitting was slowly stirring her bowl of chocolate ice cream into mush. I asked her what she was doing, and she replied very seriously, "I'm making poo-poo for God to put in people's bottoms." When my son was 3, he had night terrors for a few months. At least that's what I suspected. I was really concerned. The most unsettling thing he did wasn't waking up sobbing though. Sometimes he would wake up around midnight, walk to where I was, stare at me and then walk back to bed. He wouldn't respond to me and just sit on his bed while staring at the ground. If I tried to comfort him, he would become angry and violent. Next morning, he'd be his normal self. At that time he would often ask if ghosts were real. We never exposed him to anything with that sort of content. I'd try to reassure him that they were just imaginary. He would insist that they were real. Sometimes at night he would call me to his room and say someone was there. I was freaking out a little. Not just by the idea that my child was seeing strange shit but that he might be suffering from psychological issues. My wife insisted that this wasn't something to be concerned about. She's a psychologist and I respected her opinion, but I just couldn't stop worrying. I felt like I needed to help my kid. Anyhow, it became less and less frequent and stopped altogether for the most part. He still asks about and insists that ghosts are real from time to time. But he isn't scared at night anymore.